Hello, my name is Jeff McMullen with Kalilo Consulting. Today we're going to talk about continuous release management. This is a good starting point as far as setting up your continuous deployment pipeline. So let's get started. So in TFS, we're going to go to our builds tab, and the very first thing we're going to do is create a new build definition. We're going to start off with the ASP.NET preview template. This is just like I said, it's just a demo type project, so we're not going to do too much here. We're going to select our default agent, and let's change our name to Fabricator Development CI. I like putting CI for continuous integration. One other thing is by default is you're going to see kind of the ***.solution file. I recommend changing that and actually selecting your .sln that you actually want to deploy. You don't want someone to check in another solution file and you're accidentally deploying more things than what you think you are. Another thing, like we're not going to go through it during this tutorial. Like I said, it's a simple demo, but this is a test tab. You're definitely going to want to use this for gated build, but for now we're just going to remove those. Keep things simple. So we're going to go next and select our sources. So we are using this project, we are using the Fabricator Fiber, but we're going to drill down to our dev branch. Yes, this would have worked if we would have mapped every single thing in a repository, but that would have just filled up our build server and also increased the time of our builds. Another thing, I usually change this to true in real production environments or enterprises, but for the sake of this, we're going to leave it false. Again, I want to just point out some of these variables they're kind of built-in variables, but you can also click this variable tab and create your own variables. If you're ever putting in paths, I always recommend creating variables. Let's not hard code that much into our actual boxes, but again, this is a demo, so I am in some places going to just kind of hard code some of the paths. Let's go and change our CI trigger. We're going to enable that, and we only want this to kick off when someone checks something into the dev branch. So we got to go ahead and select our dev branch. From this point, we can go ahead and save our build definition, and I'm just going to put in a comment, initial creation of build. All right, now that we have our build definition saved, let's go back over to our code, and I'm going to to test this out. Like I said, we could just queue a build, but to show that trigger actually works, let's just drill down to our layout page into our code. We'll make a small change and we'll get it checked in. So we're gonna find there's like a label, and we're gonna change that to version 2.1. You can click the edit button here in the top right, and it's one of the nice things with new TFS. You don't have to open Visual Studio. You can change the code right here and check it in. So while we wait for that to check in, our build should have kicked off. So let's check that out. Well, we see that our build seems like it hasn't started. So usually if something like that doesn't happen, let's check to make sure our build agents is started. So this build agent, like I said, for demo purposes, I'm not running it as a Windows service. I'm just running it as an interactive agent, and it looked like it wasn't started. So let's go ahead and get that thing started. And once it starts, we should see that the agent will pick up our Qt build. All right, now that we see that our build is running, we can go ahead and leave this window open, but I'm just going to close it out. Like usually you don't see it much anyway, and I'm going to click on the build. And by clicking on the build, you can actually watch what's happening, and if there's any errors or anything like that, it will show up under this window. Now, since this is the very first time the build is running, it's going to take a little bit longer, so let's go ahead and move on to the second part, and we're going to create our release definition. We're going to start off with an empty process. Like I said, this is all on the same machine. This is probably going to be the most simple release definition you'll probably see created. So I'm going to set the environment for dev, and change the name to our Fabricam release. and then you go and click add artifacts, and this is what connects it to, this is where we're going to connect it to that build definition. Okay, let's get that added. Now we're we're enabling the trigger for continuous deployment. I'll just check this to make sure that we also see that, hey, this is triggered to run after every release, and that looks like it's right. Now we're going to go in at the test. Like I said, this is a very simple deployment. Since everything's on the same machine, really the only thing we need to do is copy the build files or the output files to our directory that IIS is pointed to. So again, I'm going to show an example of where I would use a variable. So instead of hard coding the target directory in the property, I'm going to create a target folder variable. I'm going to go back, I'm going to put in the source folder of where our build is going to drop our output at, and then use the variable here. At this point I can go ahead and save. And to test this out, let's go ahead and queue a release. Okay, so we just mainly queued the release, and we can go over to the site. And you can see at the top that change that we made, now it says support version 2.1 at the very top. Now let's go ahead and figure out, let's do the whole process together. So right now you saw me manually queue that release. So let's go back into our code and change that version back to 2.0. Again, one of the really nice things at TFS is we don't have to open up Visual Studio. We can go right into the code from the web portal, make our change, and check it in from here. So we're going to change that to 2.0. We're going to save it. And once we save it, if we look at the build, we can see our build is in progress. Now again, the second build is going to run much faster than the first one because we didn't clean out the directory. So you can see in 30 seconds, it's almost toward the very end, it's actually copying the files over to our output directory. Alright, so that's done. Now at this point, our release should have kicked off. You can see our release is not doing this work, it's copying the files over to our target directory that IIS is looking at. Alright, so now if we go back to our home page, let's refresh our screen, and you see that 2.1 is now changed to 2.0. And that is just a quick example of